What about the addenda?
Sure. So addenda aren't always required either, but I feel that a lot of my students do submit them. And the reason why is this: if there's any sort of situation in your application that you feel needs further explanation, especially if it's regarding a lower LSAT score or a trend in your grades which was a little lower than the rest of your grades, I think it's really important to bring it up and not make excuses. So it should be short and sweet. So I've definitely had students write about maybe one LSAT score being lower than the others because of some tragic situation that happened a few days before the test, or I actually had another student who had a fire happen the day of the LSAT in her building. And so they left for the LSAT and, the firemen came by. And so that was a very stressful situation. They didn't know what was happening to their building while they're taking this LSAT. So certainly we wrote about that. And I think that was helpful. But not every student needs to submit one. But I kind of err on the side of caution because when I was reading files, we read a lot of files in any given year. Certainly there are thousands of applications that come in. So if there's any sort of question mark about a situation, in the application that might come up, I think it's best to address it, briefly. Don't go into gratuitous detail. Just say, I had a difficult situation. Maybe there was some family stress and I was able to get my grades up. But I think at the end of the day, I'd rather know what's going on instead of having to find out later. I did have one example of a student who had a 2-year gap on their resume. And literally my boss at the time said, can you please reach out to them and ask them why they have a 2-year gap? So that saves us time in the long run to not have to do that. So I would rather the student address it in their application.
Yeah, those definitely seem like some clear examples. And I feel bad for that student having a fire happen right before the LSAT. It's hard enough as it is. I can definitely see that having an impact. But what about something where it's maybe somewhat more typical? Like let's say the proctors were really distracting during the LSAT, or there was a marching band outside, which unfortunately does happen more often than it should, believe it or not. So for those cases where it's affecting everybody in the room, let's say, or everyone at the test center, it's not that unique. So is it still worthwhile in that case, do you think?
Yes, I do. If there's some sort of distraction, that's good to let us know. And, just don't sound whiny, about
Yeah.
it. So yeah, just keep it very simple. Unfortunately I was distracted that day. There was a marching band outside and, I believe that affected my score, but, please regard this other score as being more indicative of my performance.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I know we're going to get lots of questions about this. So I do want to, not to harp on this too much, but one more example, the digital LSAT. It's coming up later this year, starting July, then September and on. A lot of people are going to be taking the digital LSAT for the first time, and they may not be familiar with the format or using the tablet. And there are probably still some kinks to be worked out from what I've seen. But I'm wondering if someone has a bit of a score drop because of the digital LSAT format, again, would you recommend an addendum?
I would,
Okay.
and certainly I know this is probably going to cause a bit of stress for applicants this cycle, but it is a huge change going from paper to digital. And LSAT's been talking about letting the first set of students who take it in July digitally cancel their score and see it first and then cancel, but that only that one time. So I'm sure law schools will understand that it's a big change, and so point that out. It was digital and it wasn't really I wasn't really used to that format. So certainly I would highlight that, but I wouldn't, make a lot of excuses. I just really be simple with it.
Right. Short, sweet, to the point. So what would you say is like a good maximum word count for an addendum on a topic like this?
I really prefer to stick to a paragraph. I had in my time in admissions, seen a 7-page addendum, which was quite excessive. And, you can say all that probably in one page. And, lawyers certainly, need to be able to write well. And there's a lot you can say in 7 pages, but there's a lot you can also say in one page. So I really prefer my addenda to be a paragraph or two.
Okay, well, that's definitely a good guideline. And just to get more specific, because for people who are at risk of creating monstrous 1,000-word paragraphs, can we say like 250 words, 300 words? What's a good ballpark?
It really depends on the student. I have worked with clients who had very non-traditional backgrounds. They need to explain their educational history. So literally that would be a page, but we did need a page to talk about all the different situations and address every single potential point that an admissions officer would wonder about. But if it's something as simple as, oh, okay, I didn't do well in LSAT the day, like really just like 200 words would be fine.